We'll go ahead and begin the agenda meeting where we'll be reviewing action items which will be addressed by the board on Tuesday, July 5th at 6 p.m. right here in City Hall. And certainly between now and then, we wish you a very safe and enjoyable 4th of July extended weekend, with July 4th being on Monday. People will have, I guess, an extra day to enjoy themselves, but always remember Independence Day. So I'll call upon City Manager Bill Burrough for review of those action items.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. You have a pretty short agenda for your July 5th meeting. The first item is Resolution R22-112, a resolution awarding a bid from Nabholz Construction Corporation for construction of an addition to the airport fire station, and Chief Ed Davis is here to present that item.
Board members, thank you for allowing me to come before you this afternoon. What we have is a proposal to add 625 square feet to the back of the number 4 fire station located at the Hot Springs Airport. The cost of this addition is $95,983.71. It actually comes out to be $153 and some change per square foot, which falls within the original budget that we had put together for this project. This is the last of the privacy remodels of Hot Springs Fire Department fire stations that we plan to do. It also will make some changes to kitchen, bathroom, and things of that nature, give a better environment for the firefighters to to be able to live their lives in. This does afford a greater level of privacy for the firefighters, and also obviously provides a greater level of privacy for our female firefighters. The airport fire station was the last one to have segregation of quarters, and so with this project, we will complete all of the privacy modifications that we began back in the mid-2000s.
Any questions, Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. Will this include the containment area as you've talked to us about before?
No, that's a great catch, though. One of the things that we will be doing is we are working on trying to find some cheap ways to be able to pressurize the portals between the apparatus bays and the living areas. That will come probably sometime next year. The other measures that we looked at were going to be very, very expensive and cost prohibitive. We think we found some ways to do it that will be inexpensive and still accomplish the same things. We'll have something together for you next year, though, to present on that, on the cancer reduction. We are continuing to do that, though, in other ways, like, we are having a regular schedule of the firefighters washing all of their turnout gear. We're removing the carpet from the fire stations and putting in flooring, things of that nature, to where that we have less carcinogens that can be brought in, and the floors and the walls and things like that can be easier clean. So we are trying to make a great environment for the firefighters to maintain their health, and the city manager has been really absolutely great about supporting that. But we are looking at some more modifications to the station that will be cost effective, that will accomplish the same thing we originally purposed on this.
So currently, we're not fully mitigating that risk. There's more to come.
Yes, ma'am.
This will help some.
Yes, ma'am. It will actually help quite a bit, because anytime you can segregate crew quarters, it means there are fewer people traipsing through those areas. And one of the things that we have done is we have reduced those carcinogens in the living area, and I can guarantee you we have reduced that by quite a bit. We no longer allow the firefighters to bring their turnout gear into the living areas. That's a no-no. That does not happen. So that's one of the, and if you go back and you read the studies that was done by the National Fire Protection Association, U.S. Fire Administration, the IAFF, and the IAFC, all of them point back to carcinogens primarily being brought in the fire station through the turnout gear. So if we keep the turnout gear out of the living areas, we have greatly reduced it. And remember, one of the things we did that bought us time on the portals was the fact that we put the emission systems, emission capture systems in the fire stations. So all of the fire apparatus that is normally started has an emission capture system on it that ventilates all of that diesel soot out of the station. So that also helped us to greatly reduce the cancer threat. The portals and pressurizing those little areas around the portals is the final step.
Well, your safety and all of our firefighters' safety is of utmost importance. So I'm glad we're doing all possible to mitigate those.
Yes, ma'am, we thank you for your interest in that. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Thank you.
Hey, Director Trustee?
Thank you. Hello, Chief. One question. I don't think I've seen one of these projects since I've been on the board.
Yes, sir.
So in our packet, will there be plans and specs about what's actually going to transfer?
Yeah, we can put it together. It is basically just a 25 by 25 slab that is divided into 2 bedrooms.
2 bedrooms?
Yes, sir. And that's all it is. It's just a privacy addition.
Okay.
And it really doesn't alter the footprint of the station very much.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chief, we had several stations on our unfunded capital project list several
Yeah.
years ago.
Yes, sir.
Is this the last of the major renovations that we need, the last station that needs that major renovation to
Yes,
accomplish
sir.
that?
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Very good. Any further questions? Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Next, we have Resolution R22-113, a resolution approving a work order to the master agreement for professional services between the City of Hot Springs and Garver LLC for airport drainage improvements at the Hot Springs Municipal Airport. And Glen, our airport director, is here to discuss the item.
Thank you, sir. Earlier this year, Garver was selected as the engineering firm to conduct a study of the drainage issue we have at the airport. Since then, the FAA's came back to us and asked for us to include a construction project with this study. The plan right now is to install 330 feet of dual 48-inch pipe along the front of the drainage area. Also, we're going to remove a bottleneck to help the flow better. During the construction process, Garver will provide, along with the design process, the designs, Garver will also provide construction material safety, oversight during construction. Garver will also review all pay requests submitted by the contractor and produce all reports by the FAA. The total amount of this contract is $48,500. Again, this project is an AIP project that's 95% funded by the FAA and 5% by the state aeronautics. Any questions?
Any questions of Glenn? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Resolution R22-104. Consider resolution approving the City of Hot Springs financial statements for April 2022. This is part of your old business from your last meeting, and our Finance Director, Doretha Yates, is here to present.
Thank you, Mr. Burrough. These were presented in the last meeting. There were some questions that came up. I believe I've responded to all those questions. And this is just your monthly financials.
Any questions of Doretha? Thank you.
Next, we have, this is your first ordinance of the evening, and again, this is part of your old business. It's ordinance O2226, an ordinance amending ordinance number 6410, regulating short-term residential rental businesses within the City of Hot Springs, Arkansas, declaring an emergency and for other purposes. And I believe our City Attorney, Mr. Albright, will cover this item.
Thank you, Bill. Mayor, members of the board, as Bill indicated, this was on your agenda at your last regularly scheduled business meeting as ordinance O-22-26. After some discussion on this item, it was tabled to address some additional issues. The original ordinance from last week would have made 2 changes to ordinance number 6410, and particularly dealing with the number of STRs that would be licenses that would be available in the residentially zoned areas, and also in accomplishing that, placing a cutoff for the applications for special use permits on November the 1st, so that the number could be reduced down to 400. The discussion regarding the special use permit procedure that was discussed last week has prompted me to prepare an alternative ordinance that will also be in your packet because O-2226 came to you and went to the floor and was discussed. It was tabled. That ordinance must come back the way that it was presented. However, there will be this alternative ordinance that will be in your packet that could be moved to substitute the original proposal. The alternative ordinance, which will be in your packet, does a few things. One, it eliminates the administrative policy regarding the application and approval process for special use permits. It also provides for a right of appeal to the Board of Directors at no cost to the appellant. I do want to give you a little bit of background in the way that this will come to you. Special use permits are not conditional use permits. You may recall that last year when we were discussing the basis for this regulation, the basis is found in zoning. And so we want to avoid bringing conditional use permits to the board because a conditional use permit runs with the land. They cannot be expunged. And so forevermore, that piece of property would have the ability to have an STR on it because it would have a conditional use permit. So we would like to stay with the special use permit process, which was what the board did last year. In order to do that, that would be an administrative decision initially by the Planning and Development Director. And then pursuant to state law, which we also have to follow, this is 1456-416, provides that the BZA does hear appeals of decisions by administrative officers. So that would still be in place. However, there would be no fee associated with that appeal by the appellant. In addition to that, and this is actually an amendment to the state legislation that took place in 2021, it was Act 930 of 2021, it amended the statutory scheme that allows for the following. Previously, all decisions of BZA had to go to circuit court. Now, the statute allows a governing body of a municipality may provide by ordinance that the governing body, Board of Directors, of the municipality shall hear appeals first under this section. So in other words, what we're allowed to do under state law is have the administrative decision by the director. They go through the process that we currently have in place and that it has been working well. It would go to the BZA if there is at no fee to the appellant. If there is an appeal from the BZA, that would come to the board, again, with no fee on the part of the appellant. So I'm hoping that doing those three things, eliminating the administrative policy, which is now incorporated within the ordinance itself, providing for that appeal, eliminating the fee associated with an appeal, while we're still trying to accomplish the original intent that we had last week of lowering that number from 500 to 400 and cutting off the SUP application timeline. I believe that is consistent with what was discussed last week, and this is the best way I know how to accomplish that and still comply with 1456-416.
Any questions of a city attorney?
I have a question.
Director Holliday.
If an application were to be appealed through all of these processes to us, I'm assuming we would hear it on the next available agenda and business meeting. What would that timeline be from, or the maximum timeline from time of application to eventual definite decision?
So the law provides that you have 30 days in which to appeal. So when the administrative decision is made and notices are sent out and publication is made, the appeal deadline to BZA is 30 days. So if there's an appeal that is received within that 30-day period, it would be put on their next meeting. At that meeting, if there is a decision that is appealed 30 days henceforth, then we would put it on the board's next available agenda. But the 30-day period is available for any appeal.
How often does BZA meet?
They have a schedule, in particular for these SUPs, they're meeting monthly.
Okay.
And then, of course, if there's an appeal from the Board of Directors, that will go to circuit court as usual.
Any additional questions, or Director
do.
Trustee?
Thank you, Mayor. Brian, clarify for me, who can file an appeal in these cases? Any citizen of the city of Hot Springs can file an appeal either way?
Well, if the permit is granted administratively, there are notices that are sent out to adjacent property owners.
Right.
There's a QR code that is provided, and it's published in the paper.
Right.
So yes, any aggrieved party can appeal that decision.
Okay.
So the aggrieved party, does it have to be somebody in the proximity of the STR or just somebody in the city limits?
That's right. Or is it anyone in the city?
It could be anyone who considers themselves to be an aggrieved party. That would be a factor that the tribunal would consider. Are you really aggrieved?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any further questions?
Yeah.
Director Holliday?
Again, since this is not going through conditional use and it's remaining special use, if it were to come to us, you just referred to tribunal, is it then also a quasi-judicial situation where we are unable to communicate with the public in advance
Yeah.
of the meeting?
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Absolutely.
Okay.
BZA is under a quasi-judicial function, and you would also be under a quasi-judicial function. It is not legislative.
Thank you.
So, once an appeal is made, we as a board of directors will not confer with, I guess, either side of the appeal.
My advice to the board and my advice to any member of the BZA is not to have any discussions regarding any STR application in a residentially zoned district, because you know that that is subject to an SUP, which may find its way in front of you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions of the city attorney? Thank
I
you.
apologize for the inconvenience of the remote attendance.
Understood.
Just get well.
Right.
Okay. Bill, next item?
Next is Resolution R-22-114, a resolution adopting the 2022 wastewater system master plan prepared by Christ Engineers. Mayor, we do have representatives from Christ here this evening, or this afternoon, and we'll be going through a work session immediately following your agenda items, so we'll cover this item in more detail at that time.
Very good. Thank you.
Next, we have Resolution R-22-115, a resolution approving a Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, fiscal year 2022 annual action plan, and authorizing a submission of a grant application excuse me, to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for projects listed in the action plan, and our Planning and Development Director, Ms. Kathy Sellman, is here to present that item.
Thank you. The City of Hot Springs became a community development block grant entitlement community in 2003. And the city is required to submit an annual action plan to HUD describing projects to be undertaken and how those funds will be expended. This year, HUD has awarded the city $460,152. And CDAC is recommending 12 proposed projects to you. CDAC on March 3rd considered the applications that were submitted for the 2022 award, and having a quorum, voted 4-0 to recommend a prioritized list of eligible applications. That annual action plan was made available for public review and comment on June 4th, 2022. On June 16th, CDAC, Community Development Advisory Committee, considered the FY 2022 annual action plan and voted 3-0, and that was the full membership at that meeting, to recommend to the board to approve that plan as submitted. HUD requires that that plan be submitted by July 12th. HUD then allocates 45 days for their review. So HUD approval of the annual action plan listing a project is not a guarantee that the project will take place. The project must pass through an environmental review process, and the intensity of scrutiny that goes with that is determined by the nature of each individual project. Construction projects, projects dealing with single-family housing, projects affecting historical or cultural properties or affecting sites with cultural significance to tribal nations, projects located in or near floodplains, wetlands, airports, and projects with extraordinary potential environmental impacts undergo a level of review that has the potential to delay or cancel the implementation of any individual project. Typically, project timelines are not severely disrupted by environmental review, but this is a factor that plays into this. It's out of control of the Community Development Block Grant and the city, and is completely reliant on the nature of each project and their potential environmental impacts. The 12 projects are listed in your packet, and they total that $460,152 that HUD is willing to give the City of Hot Springs for fiscal year 2022.
Any questions of Ms. Sellman? Thank you.
Mayor, your last item is ordinance O-2227, an ordinance amending the zoning map from R2 to R4 for 10 acres generally located on Shady Grove Road between Moat Street and Hollywood Avenue, amending the future land use plan map and for other purposes. And again, Ms. Sellman.
Thank you. The applicant is Mr. Steve Smith. The subject property is zoned R2 at this time, suburban residential. It's located in Board of Directors District Number 5. It's 10 acres described by meets and bounds in the approximately 400 block of Shady Grove Road. Has approximately 1,200 feet of frontage on Shady Grove Road. All of the zoning surrounding the property is R2 suburban residential. The surrounding land uses on the north and east are cemetery lands, and to the south and west are undeveloped wooded lands. There are mandatory findings that weigh into the decision whether to make a change of zoning, and the applicant included a statement in support of this zoning change request that the property demonstrates compatibility with surrounding zoning, as the surrounding land is residential but undeveloped or developed as a cemetery. This would appear to be true. Hot Springs Code describes the R4 district as a mixture of single-family homes, duplexes, apartments, customary accessory uses near schools, employment centers, and commercial centers. The subject property is conveniently located near Oaklawn Racing Casino Resort, employment to downtown, to National Park Medical Center, and to other nearby established employment centers. This 10 acres also enjoys an unusual amount of open space with the cemetery, country club, and Hot Springs Creek Greenway nearby. Those amenities may offset any greater than single-family density that is possible in R4, and if developed, Shady Grove Road provides resident access that would bypass surrounding neighborhoods and therefore not negatively impact them. Planning Commission advertised and then called for testimony at their June 9th, 2022 meeting, and by their 7-0 vote accepted the findings and recommendations of the staff report to recommend the Board of Directors adopt an ordinance amending the future land use plan map, designating the subject property as residential medium high, and also to amend the zoning map by designating the subject property R4 medium high density residential. They made that required finding that the change demonstrates compatibility with surrounding development and zoning, and found that the change is consistent with the objectives of the zoning code as required by Hot Springs Code Section 16 to 11E. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Sellman? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, we do have the President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce and Hot Springs Metro Partnership in the audience today. He doesn't have anything on the agenda, but it is his birthday, and just want to wish DJ Whataburger a happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Very good. Well,
That concludes your items.
I love that suntan.
That concludes your items, Mayor.
Thank you. That concludes all the action items that will be addressed next Tuesday evening on July 5th. Again, we wish you all a very happy and safe Independence Day and in the entire weekend. So we'll see you next Tuesday. We do have a work session following the agenda meeting, so we'll switch over here in a minute and begin that process.
I think it might have been Cayenne.
That's in my office.